Let me tell you something important right now. Choosing no contact with a narcissist is not an easy decision. It takes a level of strength, courage, and self-respect that many people struggle to find. And if you are listening to this, there is a good chance you have either already taken that step or you are standing at the edge, trying to decide if you should. But here is something you need to understand. Just because you have walked away does not mean they have emotionally disconnected from you. In many cases, the moment you stop responding is when their behavior changes behind the scenes. They do not always leave quietly because they respect your choice. They often become focused on figuring out what they can do next. Today, we are going to uncover the hidden things a narcissist may be looking for after you cut them off. Not the obvious arguments or dramatic confrontations. We are talking about the things happening beneath the surface, the reactions they hope to get from you, the signs they may be searching for, and the reasons your silence can affect them more than you realize. If you have ever questioned whether you made the right choice, or if you have ever felt like they still have some emotional hold over you even after leaving, stay with me. Because once you understand these patterns, you begin to see the situation differently. You stop reacting from confusion and start moving from awareness. The power comes from recognizing the game instead of continuing to play a role inside it. When you stop giving someone access to your emotions, you change the entire dynamic. When you go no contact with a narcissist, it can create a reaction, but it may not always appear in a dramatic way. Sometimes it shows up through small actions that seem meaningless at first. A sudden view of your story, a random like on an old post, a message that seems casual, or even something indirect that is designed to catch your attention. These actions are often less about communication and more about testing whether they still have influence over you. Your silence does not always feel like closure to them. Instead, they may see it as a loss of access, a loss of control, or a challenge to their previous position in your life. They become curious about whether they can still affect your emotions, whether you still think about them, and whether they still have a place in your mind. Many narcissistic patterns are built around receiving attention and validation from others. That attention does not always have to be positive. Praise, anger, frustration, or emotional reactions can all become a source of reassurance because it confirms that they still matter to you. When you remove that attention, the dynamic changes completely. Your peace may feel like freedom, but to someone who depended on your reactions, that silence can feel uncomfortable. They may struggle with the idea that you are no longer explaining yourself, chasing answers, or trying to fix the connection. What affects them the most is often not simply losing the relationship, but the possibility that you are genuinely okay without them. That is when they may start looking for signs that they still have an emotional connection with you. This is why some narcissists begin with subtle attempts instead of direct communication. They may watch your updates without saying anything. They might share something online that feels strangely personal or reminds you of the past. They could reach out through a mutual connection or find a small excuse to appear in your world again. These actions are often meant to create curiosity and emotional movement. They are looking for any sign that you are still paying attention. The reaction itself becomes the goal. It does not always matter whether you respond with love, anger, or sadness. The important thing for them is knowing that they can still create an emotional response. Because the moment you react, they feel that the connection has not completely disappeared. This is where you need to be careful because people who have spent a long time around narcissistic behavior often know exactly which emotional buttons to push. They understand your fears, your memories, your weaknesses, and the moments that made you feel attached. If they cannot get you to communicate directly, they may try to create emotions that keep them present in your thoughts. They may want you remembering old arguments, questioning whether they miss you, checking their social media, or wondering if they have changed. They do not always need a conversation to feel powerful. Sometimes knowing that you are still emotionally affected can feel like enough. Their goal is not always to bring you back immediately. Sometimes it is simply to know they still have access to your emotions. The moment you show a reaction, even a small one, they may interpret it as an opening, a comment, an emotional post, a quote that reveals your feelings, or any sign that you are still affected can send the message that the connection is still available. And when someone believes the door is still open, they may feel confident returning whenever it benefits them. This is why maintaining no contact is not just about avoiding messages or conversations. It is also about protecting your emotional space. The real separation happens when they no longer have the ability to control your thoughts, your mood, or your decisions. That is when your silence becomes more than a lack of communication. It becomes a boundary they cannot easily break. Now let's talk about another common tactic that can happen during no contact. Sometimes a narcissist will intentionally create distance and disappear completely. They may wait, expecting you to start questioning everything. You might begin wondering why they have not reached out, why they seem unaffected, or whether they ever truly cared. This silence can feel painful because your mind naturally searches for answers, but sometimes the absence itself becomes part of the pattern. It can be used to create uncertainty and make you doubt your own decision. The hope is that the discomfort becomes so strong that you are the one who breaks the silence first. The moment you reach out, they may feel like control has shifted back into their hands. They are not only hoping for a response, they may be expecting one. They often depend on the belief that you will eventually give in. In their mind, they assume your silence will not last forever. They expect that sooner or later you will miss them, question your decision, remember the good moments, and return to the same dynamic. And when they cannot reach you directly, they may try different ways to get your attention from a distance. They might share things online that feel like hidden messages, tell incomplete versions of the story to others, or suddenly display a new relationship as if they are completely happy. But many times the purpose is not truly moving forward. It is about creating a reaction. They want to know if you are still watching, still affected, and still emotionally connected, because your emotions represent access, and access represents influence. During no contact, every attempt to get your attention can become a way of testing whether they still have power over you. It is not always about healing, growth, or understanding what happened. Sometimes it is about pulling you back into a familiar cycle. They may not want a healthier connection. They may simply want to restore the same pattern where they had emotional control. They want to know that even in your silence, they still occupy your thoughts. But every day you choose not to respond, something changes inside you. Every moment you resist the urge to explain, defend, or reconnect, you rebuild your own strength. Your silence becomes a reminder that your life is no longer centered around their reactions. Slowly, piece by piece, you begin taking back the power you once handed away. When a narcissist loses access to you, it does not always lead to genuine reflection or accountability. Instead of looking honestly at their own behavior, they may try to change the meaning of your silence. They may attempt to make you feel guilty for protecting yourself. They know that guilt can be a powerful emotional attachment, and they may rely on your kindness and compassion to create doubt. If they cannot reach you physically, they may try to remain present in your thoughts by making you question whether you made the right choice. Your silence becomes something they interpret as a personal attack because it challenges their sense of control. Rather than accepting that they hurt you, they may create a completely different version of the story where they are the one who was wronged. Suddenly, the person who caused the pain may present themselves as the victim. They may act as if you were the one who abandoned them, the one who became distant, or the one who refused to try. This type of reversal can be deeply confusing because it makes you look back at your own actions and question your memory. You start analyzing every conversation, every disagreement, and every moment when things changed. You begin asking yourself whether you were too sensitive or whether you should have handled things differently. That confusion is exactly what keeps people emotionally attached. They want you focused on proving whether you were wrong instead of remembering why you chose distance in the first place. They want you to remember their charm, their affection, and the beautiful moments while minimizing the pain and patterns that pushed you away. That doubt becomes an opening they can use. If they can make you feel enough shame or responsibility, they know you may start believing you owe them something. Maybe a message, maybe an explanation, maybe another chance. Narcissistic people often know how to use a caring person's empathy as a weakness. They are drawn to people who are loyal, understanding, patient, and willing to see the best in others. Those qualities are beautiful, but they can become painful when someone uses them for their own benefit. When they cannot convince you to return through affection, they may try to pull you back through guilt. They may present themselves as hurt, misunderstood, lonely, or abandoned. Sometimes they do this directly, and sometimes they use indirect methods through mutual connections, social media, or carefully chosen silence. This kind of manipulation can be especially effective when you are still healing because guilt feels incredibly heavy for someone who genuinely cares. They understand that a compassionate person does not like feeling as though they have hurt someone. They may take advantage of that inner conflict, but what they are seeking is not always your love. They are seeking your emotional energy. They want your attention, your worry, your mental space, and the constant inner conversation where you question whether you did the right thing. That moment when you are lying awake thinking, maybe I was too harsh, or maybe I should have tried harder, can keep you connected to them even when there is no communication. They place the emotional burden in your hands and wait to see if you will carry it for them. They are not looking for your peace because your peace means they no longer have control over your emotions. They want uncertainty. They want you to believe that protecting yourself was an act of cruelty and that creating distance was a form of betrayal. Guilt can become extremely loud when you allow it to grow. It can replay the same questions over and over until you start forgetting the reasons you had to leave. Some people mistake this inner conflict as proof that they still love someone, but sometimes it is simply the result of being conditioned to prioritize another person's emotions over their own. Narcissistic patterns can create a cycle where you feel responsible for fixing problems that were never yours to carry. Even without direct contact, they may still hope to remain connected to your mind. Not necessarily because they want you to chase them, but because they want you trapped in constant reflection. They want you replaying conversations, imagining what they would say, wondering what they are doing, or thinking about what you could have done differently. That mental loop keeps the emotional connection alive. Over time, you may realize that the strongest form of control is not having access to someone's time or presence. It is having access to their peace. But the moment you recognize that pattern, you begin breaking free. Every time you choose not to reach out, every time you allow the thought to pass without acting on it, you weaken the old cycle. You slowly teach yourself that your peace is more valuable than returning to a place that constantly hurt you. You slowly begin replacing their voice with your own. Instead of constantly asking yourself, what if they change? You start reminding yourself, I deserve peace. I deserve stability. I deserve a life that feels safe. That is the moment your real strength begins to return. Narcissistic patterns often survive in environments filled with confusion, emotional highs, and constant uncertainty. But the more you choose peace, the less influence they have over you. The longer you remain grounded, the weaker their ability to affect your emotions becomes. Your distance is not a sign that you are losing. It is proof that you are healing. It represents the moment their illusion starts falling apart and your connection with yourself begins growing stronger. You are no longer living inside their reality. You are creating your own. One of the biggest things that keeps people connected to a narcissist after separation is the mental energy they continue to receive. Constantly analyzing their behavior, trying to decode mixed signals, checking their social media, or searching for hidden meanings behind their actions all keeps your attention attached to them. Even without direct communication, that focus becomes a form of emotional connection. From their perspective, it can feel like the bond is still alive because they still occupy your thoughts. They do not need to send messages or make phone calls if they have already created a space inside your mind. The connection has simply changed forms. This is why breaking free is not only about removing them from your surroundings, it is also about removing their influence from your inner world. This is one reason why many people struggle to find closure after dealing with a narcissistic person. They often do not end relationships in a healthy or honest way. They may avoid accountability, refuse to acknowledge the pain they caused, or leave without giving clear answers. Sometimes they disappear completely. Sometimes they become emotionally distant overnight. Other times, they act as if nothing happened and move forward without explanation. The reason this creates so much pain is because the human mind naturally searches for completion. When something ends without understanding, your brain tries to solve the mystery. It goes back through conversations, memories, and moments, trying to discover what went wrong. And during that process, the person who hurt you can remain at the center of your thoughts. Many narcissistic patterns involve leaving behind small pieces of hope before creating distance. They may talk about a future together, offer an apology that sounds meaningful but changes nothing, or say they simply need time and space. These moments can create emotional uncertainty because they leave you wondering what is real. Were they serious? Will they come back? Should you wait? These small pieces of hope can become emotional attachments that keep you connected. They act like psychological reminders that prevent you from fully letting go. While you are trying to understand their words, your attention remains focused on them. And the more time you spend trapped in that cycle of waiting and wondering, the longer their presence continues inside your life. Even their silence can have an impact. When someone refuses to communicate clearly, your mind often tries to create its own explanations. You start asking questions like, why are they not reaching out? Did they ever care? Was everything my fault? The absence of answers creates a space where overthinking grows. Sometimes they may not contact you directly, but they might share things online that appear designed to get noticed. A vague message, a carefully chosen caption, or a picture that suggests they are happier than ever can create emotional reactions. Whether intentional or not, these actions can keep you focused on them instead of yourself. The goal is not always about love or missing the relationship. It can be about maintaining emotional influence. The attachment that remains after a painful relationship is not always proof that the connection was healthy. Sometimes it is the result of emotional patterns that trained you to stay focused on someone who constantly created uncertainty. They may want your healing process to take longer. They may want your confidence to remain connected to how they treated you. They may want memories of them to interrupt your peace and make you question your progress. Because as long as they remain important in your thoughts, they feel like they still matter. For some narcissistic personalities, becoming irrelevant is more painful than losing the relationship itself. That is why true detachment is not just about blocking a number or avoiding communication. It is about reclaiming your emotional freedom. As long as someone occupies your thoughts, they can continue affecting your life even when they are physically gone. A narcissist may leave behind a mental version of themselves that you continue interacting with. You replay conversations, analyze their behavior, question your choices, and search for answers that may never come. The difficult part is that you may mistake this constant thinking for healing. You may believe you are processing the relationship, when in reality, you are still carrying emotional weight that belongs to the past. From a narcissistic perspective, this ongoing focus can still feel like a form of validation. They do not need your presence if they still have your attention. The cycle continues, not through messages or conversations, but through the emotional impact they left behind. When a narcissist experiences no contact, they may not view it as a final decision. They may see it as a temporary interruption in the usual pattern. Deep down, they may assume you will eventually return. They believe the connection is too strong to disappear completely. This belief often comes from the cycles that existed before, where moments of affection were followed by distance, conflict, and reconciliation. Over time, those patterns can create a powerful emotional attachment. They know what makes you feel guilty, what makes you question yourself, and what memories keep you connected. They have seen the parts of you that still hope for change. So when you walk away, they may not think you are truly finished. They may believe you simply need time before you come back. Because of this mindset, some narcissists do not immediately chase after someone who leaves. They wait. They expect the silence to become uncomfortable for you. They assume you will miss the connection, remember the good moments, and eventually reach out. They believe the emotional attachment they created will bring you back. Sometimes they may even tell others a different version of the story, portraying you as the person who became distant, unfair, or unwilling to try. This allows them to protect their image while creating doubt about your decision. If you start feeling misunderstood or guilty, you may feel the urge to explain yourself, and that urge is exactly what can reopen the door they were waiting for. Even when they say nothing, their mindset may remain the same. They may not accept that you are truly done. In their mind, the connection is not over. They believe the emotional hold they created still exists, and they assume that eventually you will return to the same cycle. But the moment you stop trying to prove yourself, stop seeking their approval, and stop carrying responsibility for their emotions, that cycle begins to lose its power. You are no longer waiting for them to change. You are choosing to change the way you respond. And that is where your freedom begins. They convince themselves that you are simply reacting emotionally. In their mind, they say things like, "They will come back once they calm down." This is one reason why many narcissists do not immediately chase after someone who chooses silence. It is not always because they have accepted the separation or moved forward. Sometimes it is because they are observing and waiting. They want to see how strong your decision really is. They want to know whether the emotional attachment they created still has a hold on you. If you eventually reach out, even with a simple message, they may see it as confirmation that the connection is still available. To them, it is not necessarily about rebuilding love or creating something healthier. It can become about proving that they still have influence over your emotions. They often believe time will work in their favor. They wait for the intensity of your anger to disappear, for your confidence in your decision to weaken, and for the painful memories to become less clear. They understand that human beings naturally remember certain moments more strongly than others. With enough time, you may begin forgetting the stress, the emotional exhaustion, the constant uncertainty, and the moments when you felt like you had to be careful with every word. Instead, your mind may return to the exciting moments, the chemistry, the affection, and the memories that made you feel connected. They depend on that shift. They allow distance to create nostalgia, hoping that the version of them you miss becomes stronger than the reality you experienced. And if they notice that you are genuinely moving forward, they may try to appear again in small and subtle ways. It may be a simple message asking how you are doing. It could be a reminder of an old memory, a song you both liked, or something that connects them to your past together. These moments can feel meaningful because they touch emotional memories, but they do not always represent true change or accountability. Sometimes they are simply attempts to see whether they still have access to you. They want you questioning their intentions. They want you wondering whether they miss you, whether they have changed, or whether there is still a possibility. They are not necessarily opening the door because they have transformed. They may simply be checking whether the door is still unlocked. The most difficult part of no contact is often not the absence of communication. It is releasing the hope attached to the person you wanted them to become. It is letting go of the belief that one day they will finally understand your value, recognize your pain, and treat you with the care you always deserved. Many people struggle because they are not only grieving the relationship, they are grieving the future they imagined. Narcissistic individuals can recognize this hope, and sometimes they benefit from keeping it alive. They know you want answers. They know you want closure. They know you want to believe that everything you invested had meaning. This is why they may not feel the need to chase aggressively. They assume your emotions will eventually bring you back. When they lose direct access to you, they often shift their attention toward controlling the story surrounding the breakup. It is not always about receiving praise. It can be about protecting their image and influencing how others view the situation. Since they can no longer communicate with you directly, they may use indirect channels instead. Mutual friends, shared social circles, or online platforms can become places where they present their version of events. They may begin planting small ideas that create doubt about your actions. They might say things like, "I don't even know what happened. They just became different." Or, "I tried everything, but they refused to communicate." On the surface, these statements may sound innocent, but they can subtly shift responsibility away from them. This approach can be effective because narcissistic individuals are often skilled at appearing calm, reasonable, and hurt in front of others. People who only see the outside version of the situation may believe they are the victim. They may see someone who appears confused or heartbroken while viewing you as distant, harsh, or unwilling to compromise. This is why protecting your peace requires understanding that you do not have to convince everyone of your truth. Not everyone witnessed what happened behind closed doors. They may avoid taking responsibility by focusing attention on your reactions instead of their behavior. They may describe themselves as abandoned, misunderstood, or betrayed because that version protects their image. Sometimes they do not even need to directly attack you. They may share vague messages online about betrayal, toxic people, or healing from difficult relationships. These posts can appear general, but they may be designed to influence how others see the situation. The challenge is that outsiders usually do not know the full story. They did not witness the emotional ups and downs, the manipulation, or the moments when you felt lost inside the relationship. They only see the image someone chooses to display. That is why your healing cannot depend on proving yourself to everyone. Some people will believe what they want to believe, no matter how much evidence you provide. Real freedom begins when you stop trying to defend your reality to people who are determined to misunderstand it. Your silence does not mean you have lost. It means you have chosen not to participate in a cycle that keeps hurting you. Intentional silence can be a powerful boundary. Emotional detachment can be a powerful form of self-respect. The moment you stop chasing validation from those who refuse to see your experience, you create space for your own healing. You no longer need them or anyone else to confirm what you already know. Your peace becomes more important than their version of the story, and that is when their influence begins to disappear.